What is up, guys? This is Josh the Gamer here, coming at you with a brand new video. So today we are going to be covering running Quorum programs within the command line. Now, I mostly recommend for those who don't need speech or anything of that nature to use sodbeans and or netbeans, whichever you prefer. Simply because you don't have to worry about all the quirks of the command line. However, if you just want to do it in the command line and not have to worry about a huge entire environment and trying to learn a new one, then this may just be the tutorial for you. So, let's get started. First things first, you need to make sure you have Java and the Java Development Kit installed. And you need to make sure that you have your path set for your Java home. If you don't have your Java home set within your system path, you are not going to be able to run any Java commands in the command line. And with this, you need to be able to run Java commands in the command line. I cannot stress that enough. So, once you have that done, you need to go to the Quorum page, quorumlanguage.com. I'll have a link for that down in the video description. And you need to go to the downloads page. Now, the first two links you'll find are for the environment known as sodbeans. You'll find a Windows and a Mac version. Those are not what you want. You want the next two links downward. Now, these two links are for the console version of Quorum, which is exactly what we need for the command line. Now, as of right now, for you Linux users, you're gonna have to either have another computer on hand to be able to do this, or you're gonna have to have a Windows VM or a Mac OS X VM in order to do this, because there is no Linux support in Quorum as of yet. Soon there will be. The biggest reason there is no Linux support right now is the font library. Don't ask me. I don't understand it myself. Anyway, make sure that you click on the download link designated for your operating system. So if you're Mac, download the Mac version. If you're Windows, download the Windows version. Once you hit that link, you will be brought to a SourceForge page. Now SourceForge is kind of an older software downloading site, but it's just what the Quorum team uses to host their stuff. It should take a couple seconds for it to start your download, and then once it does, you should have a zip file being downloaded. Now, if you're on newer versions of Mac OS X, such as El Capitan, Yosemite, and OS Sierra, when it's done downloading, it'll decompress the file for you, so you'll just have a folder there for you to access. If you're on Windows, however, you have to manually extract it yourself. So you have to have a program such as WinRAR, 7-zip, or you can even use Windows Explorer to decompress a zip file if you really needed to. So once that is downloaded and you have extracted it to a place that you can find it at, go inside of that folder that you unzipped. You should find a folder called Quorum. Open that up, and now you should have a quorum.jar and a library folder. The quorum.jar and the library folder are very, very important. The library folder contains the entire standard library for Quorum. So everything from the game class to the random class, the math class, everything within the Quorum standard library is in that folder. The quorum.jar file, however, that is what we need to use to compile our programs and build them to a jar, so we can actually run our Quorum programs. So now that we know exactly what each of these are, let's go ahead and go into our command line now, because now we can actually go into our command line. I have my command line in my taskbar. However, if you don't, on Mac, you want to go to Spotlight and type in terminal. It should come up with terminal.app. Click on that and terminal should open. Otherwise, you can go into your applications folder within Finder, utilities, and then terminal should be in that folder. If you're on Windows, go into your start menu and type CMD. It should come up with command prompt. Click on that and open it. It's the same way with every version of Windows. From XP, Vista, 7, 8, 8.1, 10, you name it, it's the same way with every version. However, since I have it in my taskbar, I'm going to go ahead and open it from there. Now, what you want to do is once you have your command prompt open, navigate to the folder that your quorum.jar is located in. So I'm going to go to my D drive, which is my flash drive, and I'm going to say cd software / quorum 5.0.11 / quorum. Now I am in that quorum directory. Next thing we want to do is we need to make sure that we actually have a quorum file that we can compile. So go into your favorite text editor such as Notepad, Notepad++, or TextEdit, hell even Text Strangler on the Mac, or whatever that it is that you use, and type some quorum code that you know you can run. Make sure you know it works and everything. In my case, I have a file typed out here. I have a main class, a main action, and an action called Hello World. Now, this Hello World action, all it does is output Hello World to the console. It's nothing too exciting, nothing too extravagant, but it's good for this tutorial. Now, of course, in our action main, I have Hello World being called. Why? Because the main action is the first action that gets called when the program is executed. So I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to go to my USB drive, and I'm going to go into that directory of the quorum.jar file. This is very important. If you do not save this file in the same directory as your quorum.jar file, you're not going to be able to just reference the file by name. You're going to have a relative path to it in order to reference it, and you don't necessarily want that all the time. So, now that we have a file saved, you should be able to see it within your Finder or your File Explorer or whatever. Or if you are strictly a command prompt user, you can just do dir or ls, whichever, depending on whichever command line you're using. It's ls on the Mac, dir on Windows. You should be able to find a main.quorum file that's listed. That is exactly what we need. So first things first, we're going to do java space jar space quorum.jar. Make sure this quorum.jar with the Q, it has to be capital. Make sure that's capitalized, otherwise it very well could not work. So, once we execute that, it gives us some instructions. It has different ways in which you can compile a quorum program. Every single way, it will compile into a jar file regardless. The first thing, first things first, if you want to request that quorum compiles your source file and puts it into a jar called default.jar, because default.jar is the default name that Quorum uses for their jar files unless you specify. You would just do java space -jar space quorum.jar space dash compile, and then you put your source file. So for example, the example they give here is hello.quorum. However, if you want to specify a name of your jar, before you do your dash compiled flag, you need to put a dash name, and that will specify the name of the jar file it creates. And then, of course, you can compile multiple source files by doing java space dash jar space quorum.jar, and then specifying all of the files that you want Quorum to compile without using a comma. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and generate a jar file both ways that it gives us. So we're going to do a java space dash jar. We're going to say quorum.jar space dash compile. We're going to say main.quorum. I need to make sure I spell compile right, otherwise it's not going to work. Now, once you execute that command, it'll say the version of Quorum you are using. In this case, I'm using Quorum 5, and then it'll say build successful or build failed, and then it'll give you an error. So, since mine built successfully, I can go ahead and do a dir, and it should now have a run and a build folder. Inside the build folder, all it is just the .class files and the standard library and that kind of stuff. We don't necessarily need what all is in there at the moment. However, in the run folder, you will find our default.jar file. When we execute that in the command line, it'll print out hello world to the console. So let's go ahead and we're going to navigate to that run folder, and we are going to run that jar file. So java-jar default.jar. And as you can see, once we run it, it says hello world. That's pretty dang cool. However, so now let's go back a directory, and we're going to run the same command we used before for compiling it. However, we are going to specify a name for the jar. So we're going to do java-jar quorum.jar dash name. We're going to say program dash compile main.quorum. Now, as you can see here, it does the same thing. Says what version of Quorum you're using, and then it'll say build successful or build failed, and it'll give you that error. However, mine built successfully. So now, if we go into that run folder, and we go ahead and have the command prompt show us what files are in there, we should now see a program.jar. So let's go ahead and run our program.jar. It should do the same exact thing as our default.jar did. So there we go. It goes, when we run it, it outputs hello world. This is actually a very simple way of doing Quorum programs if you don't want to use the environment. However, if you're coming from the environment such as NetBeans or SodBeans or something, it's gonna be a little bit of a learning curve, because typically the IDEs will execute this stuff for you, whereas if you're using the command line yourself, you have to execute these flags yourself. So anyways, that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.